From George Habib, at what point do you become a small business rather than a freelancer, hustler, self-starter? What changes for you after becoming a business owner? Ooh, that's a good question.
It is a good question. And George, you might like my first book, The Entrepreneur Equation, because I actually talk about the categories. I come up with like 3 different categories. The first is a jobby, which is a hobby that's disguised as a job or a business, which I think is your sort of like hustler kind of side thing that you're talking about. And then I talk about job business, which is basically a business that's dependent entirely upon you. So if you go on vacation, there's no revenue coming in. If you get hit by a bus, the business ceases to exist. And not to say that there's anything wrong with the first two. In fact, they're great ways to try out a business. It doesn't create kind of equity value and wealth. You're building income, but you're not building something that's saleable. So what changes, and again, this is all dependent on your objectives, and this is not for everyone, but if you're trying to build something that has value apart from you that you can eventually sell, and you're building that wealth over long periods in time, you have to come up with something that shifts from it being entirely dependent on you to being scalable enough that it has a value apart from you. And so that's really that differential. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, it's the reason why out of the, now it's 31.7 million small businesses in this country, only 6 million of them have employees, because hiring that first employee is challenging, it's expensive, not just in terms of salaries, but in terms of taxes and benefits and laws and all those kinds of things. But that is that next level up. And so if you're really looking for that wealth creation opportunity, you have to really think about how you're systematizing and scaling the business to go to that next level.
Ooh, wow, that's very thorough.
Yeah, it's funny.
You wrote a book on this.
I did. I wrote a whole book about it. I think a lot of people, I've done a really good job of sort of like disassociating what I actually do for a living from Twitter. So I think people think I just like spend most of my time like on TV and on podcasts on Twitter just being snarky and stuff like that. But I actually have a very robust business background and have done billions of dollars of transactions, made a lot of people a lot of money. And so, business advice is something that, I have sort of a deep set of experience in.
Why? Yeah, I think it's good. You should be both snarky on Twitter and a boss at business advice. Would you say it's hopeless right now in 2021, the idea of starting a small business?
So I feel like entrepreneurs and small business owners, at their core have to be optimists. Like that's the whole thing. Like you would never, if you looked at the statistics of, the failure rates of small business and how much they made, you would never start one based on like statistics. You have to have that optimism and that feeling that you are better suited to solve a problem at the right time than everybody else. And I feel like in any scenario, there are always opportunities. So it's just more challenging and you have more risks. But that doesn't mean the opportunities aren't there. It just means that you need to prepare for them in a different way. And so if you're that right person that is ready to take on those challenges, you just have to factor that into your risk reward evaluation, your entrepreneur equation, as we like to call it per the book title. But it's definitely not for everyone. Not everybody was cut out to be an entrepreneur. There are lots of people who are really good at the execution piece or being told what to do and going out to do it. There are a lot of people that don't have the risk tolerance. There are a lot of people that just don't have the mentality of like, I'm just going to keep doing this and like I hit the wall and I'm just going to keep going through and I'm going to go over the wall. I'm going to go around the wall. It takes a certain personality type. So it definitely isn't for everyone, but if you are that right person, there's still going to be that opportunity, even though it seems less hopeful than maybe it did, 5 or 10 years ago.
Are getting mentors an important part of this, or do you feel like you can sort of learn the entrepreneurial spirit, by just sort of like doing your own research, or like, I don't know, watching YouTube video. I feel like you could learn just about anything from watching YouTube videos, but how important would you say are mentors?
So I would argue that watching YouTube videos is mentorship. I think that people are very caught up in this idea that there's this mythical business person who's going to like come down from the rafters and take you under their wing and introduce you to clients that are going to give you millions of dollars and shepherd your career. Like, that doesn't happen. So, somebody that I know, he really interesting guy, who's one of the producers actually of Pretty Women, the movie, came up with this concept called 5-minute mentors that's always stuck with me. And it's like having this conversation, listening to this conversation right now, or asking someone a pointed question at some point in time, or listening to a YouTube video, taking those collective experiences and interactions and letting them inform you, versus this idea that there is going to be this one person. Now, sometimes that does happen. And I actually have a really great mentee in the arena of investment banking. As you mentioned, I'm a recovering investment banker myself. And the way that our relationship sort of evolved wasn't that he came to me and was like, oh, hey, could you be my mentor? Like that doesn't happen. It's the outgrowth of a relationship. So he came to me and he said, it was referred by a friend of the family, and said, he was like he was so cute. He's like 16 years old. And he's like, I want to be an investment banker. I'm like, I didn't even know what an investment banker was when I was 16, but good for you. Like, what is it?
I was giving bad hand jobs.
I'm sure they were good. Don't put yourself down, Chrissy. I'm sure they were very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, that could have been your entrepreneurial, kind of side hustle, side gig.
I've seen South Park episodes about that.
Exactly. Butter's Bottom Bitch, one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, right. You love South Park.
I do.
Butters became a pimp.
Do you know what I am saying? So anyway, back to my mentee. So he came to me and he said, like, what are the things that I should be doing if I want to, down the road become an investment banker? And so we talked about things, and I gave him some really tactical things. Like, for any of you who might want to be an investment banker one day, things like, teach yourself how to do a comparable company analysis. Teach yourself how to do a discounted cash flow analysis. Like, learn the different. And I gave him like this whole spiel, and he's like, okay, thank you. And then he would like come back to me, from time to time and ask like a pertinent question. And it was always like very specific, not and like, okay, am I doing these right things? Would you shift anything? Could you help me understand this? And so like, we just kind of built up this relationship, but it was always him coming to me, asking for the information. And it was very specific and pointed. And eventually, like, we developed a relationship. And by the time it was time for him to go get an investment banking job, I was like fully engaged and making recommendations and whatnot. And like, now it's clear, like, he is like, we have an official sort of mentor-mentee relationship. And I've guided him through some really cool things in his career, and he's kicking butt. But it came out of this like outgrowth of some like specific questions, trying not to use too much of the time. And there was a good fit there. And so that relationship evolved. And so that's really how a mentorship happens. It's not like signing up for something like, oh, fill out this application and I will become your mentor. So I think people just approach it the wrong way. But again, you don't need to have that person. That's sort of the exception rather than the rule. This was like a very roundabout, like we started in one place, we got sidetracked by like hand jobs, and then it came back to mentorship. But I feel like a lot of good information. Yeah, like exactly. Like life. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for life.
That's probably going to be the name of my autobiography, Sidetracked by Hand Jobs.